And is there a policy or a position that you really wanted to discuss that you find difficult to sort of break through and have a discussion with the, a broader audience?
Look, obviously, we are reasonably well known for including a policy to bring immigration back down, and for that we are criticised by both the hard left and the hard right of politics. That's a difficult conversation to have because Pauline Hanson has so poisoned the well on that issue for decades.
For the wrong reason, yeah.
Yeah, focusing on ethnicity or culture or religion or those types of things. So it's an incredibly difficult issue to talk about. And to this day, we get some of the other minor parties who are on the fringe attack us for those issues. On the hard right or on the hard left, because we don't want to keep out X type of people, or the hard right will attack us, and on the hard left because we want to take migration back to the level that it was successfully in the 20th century of 70,000 per year. 7 million migrants came to Australia in the 20th century, a wonderful success story. And then John Howard really ramped it up to 200,000 for his big business mates and to really destroy wage growth and unions. So you've got to really know these issues, and they're difficult ones to nuance. But at the end of the day, we've got a good number of people out there who get what we're talking about. There's a good number of people that don't. And because we're a very unique party, we combine, a bunch of things that nobody else does, throw into the mix, and that confuses some people. And until you have your more in-depth conversations where you win over 9 out of 10 people, it's always going to be the way. But there's ideological and commercial agendas against our party, and we understand that, and they can be powerful on either social media or in mainstream media.
And I think it's a really important point to discuss, though, because what it has, just immigration was very much politicised. It started with Rudd's change to our immigration policy, which gave the attention. And then obviously people like Tony Abbott really used it for their own political means to be able to divide, to just do the right, hard right textbook policy play. And unfortunately what it's meant is it has made immigration and obviously Pauline Hanson and that lot have definitely influenced it as well, because it's made it harder to talk about. But in the you go on Twitter now and there is so much division, it's almost hysterical between the hard right and hard left, that so many people in between are being drowned out, and they're not even necessarily the silent majority, they're just not being heard. I heard a speech, I think it was I watched a live thing this morning with Malcolm Turnbull, and he quoted someone, he didn't say who it was, but I have my guesses it's Joe Hockey, but he'd said he'd never felt less able to speak freely than he feels right now. And that's really interesting, because I think that what we're at risk now in this massive social experiment of social media is being too afraid to have logical, rational conversations about policy, because they have been hijacked. And actually, for the majority of us, we need to stop and think, okay, immigration isn't racist. It doesn't, it can be if you position it that way, but
doesn't have to be.
It never, that's right. I mean, bringing people into this country to become citizens is just, it's a fact of life. It's what really it has been the foundation of our modern or Western, and you can say it's our Western takeover. But the reality of where we are at today has largely been influenced by those immigrants. I'm here because of that. Most people everyone that's not an Indigenous or First Nations Australian came here from somewhere else.
Well, even they did, they were the first migrants to Australia, and tens of thousands of years ago. But migration it happens everywhere, and that's a good thing. But it's you know, if you're interested in sustainability, if you're interested in the human impact on our environment, and you should be concerned about rapid growth in population, and it doesn't matter if that comes from high fertility of 6 children per woman on average in a country like Nigeria, or if it comes from high immigration in a country like Australia. You should think to yourself, you know, this is an issue we should really understand and talk through. And it is hijacked by the hard left and hard right. John Howard did the big, you know, distraction with the boats. And the reason he did that is because he ramped up migration for the property industry and others. But he wanted to say, you know, we've stopped the boats, you know, hardly any numbers, but he wanted to say, I've stopped the boats. So they're completely conflating refugees and asylum seekers with economic migration, where we take the best doctors, the best nurses, the best teachers from the developing world. And you've got to ask yourself, is that a moral thing to do? So there's all sorts of, nuances to this debate, but in simple terms, people want to shut you down. If they've built up their self-worth on saying, I'm pro-migration, if you want to reduce migration at all, you must be anti-migration, and I'm morally superior to you. I've built my self-worth on supporting migrants. And any challenge to that notion of self-identity brings out you must be an X or a Y, and they try and shut down the debate. And that's not good for a democracy. That's not good for, you know, any sort of modern society, any civilized society. And, you know, within our party, we can talk to people about whatever issue and just have a discussion, and you should be able to do that.
I think this is becoming an increasing issue. Our own virtue signalling is actually becoming the biggest threat to free speech, certainly in this country. It's not helped by mass media influence. It's not helped by certain vested interests, for sure. But I think the reality is that we need to start push back and have adult conversations. But and I want to keep, you know, prodding on immigration for this reason, because I question whether there's any other platform for these conversations to be had. But if we can accept the proposition that there is a relationship, very direct relationship between environment with finite resources and population, the more people, the more stress on resources, therefore the negative consequence. And if we can also accept that a controlled population, a population that doesn't go into billions immediately, has a better chance of being able to manage and you know, sustainably monitor they're not going to use all the water and drain all the resources from the water at one time. But I think most people are rational enough to accept that point. So if we can accept that there is merit to managing population, and that there are two primary ways to do that: migration and internal reproduction. Now, that's the one I'm going to go to. So I wonder if it's the one that's potentially pushed to the side over the red flags around immigration. But, you know, studying China, I did a degree with Chinese business, so I studied a lot about what Mao did and the one-child policy and the problems with that. Obviously, that's not anything that you're tabling, so that's important probably to highlight straight off the bat. So what is your approach or thought processes around that, around how, what role we have to play around our own procreation?
Freedom of choice, number one. Freedom of choice. But number two, education. Really, it's about understanding the issues you've just been through and talked through. And secondly, it's about it's part of giving equal opportunity for everybody. And then people tend to make sensible decisions, don't they? Like, look at developed country like Australia. Our fertility's gone from, 4 children per woman post World War II down to just below 2. And 2.1 is the replacement rate. So we're roughly at the replacement rate at the moment. And because women are given, much more opportunity, work and other things, and also voluntary contraception, just having those choices. And in other societies, you know, people aren't so fortunate. So that's where we've got to assist and support and help. We can be a global leader. One of our core values is global vision. So it's not about saying, hey, we're just going to do what we want here and stuff you. You know, it's about saying climate change is a global issue. We're going to do what we can here and help others to do the same. Population's a global issue. We're going to do what we can do here and help others to do the same. So it's not about, you know, shutting the gate. It's not about stopping immigration. It's not about, you know, stuff climate change because we can't control the world. It's about global vision. It's about thinking global, acting local, and working together.
I think so. I mean, these are really important topics. So, for example, I've read research after research say that there's a positive correlation or a definite relationship between female education and fertility rates. So, the idea that the greater access to a career via means of education usually puts a downward pressure on the number of children that a woman has. And from experience myself, that's absolutely true, because it's very hard to balance a full career when you've got, you know, 5 or 6 children. Not saying it can't be done. There's plenty of examples that it can be, but it certainly makes it harder. And it puts further stress on, you know, childcare and a ton of other, you know, there becomes this way, you know, is it even worth me working because of the cost of being able to look after the children is significant, and it is here in this country. But I think the important point that you raised really early on, it's around choice. It's around the choice. It's not so much being dictated that we believe that, you know, no one should have more than 2 children because they do so that they're going to negatively impact on our population. It's that if you allow nature to do its thing, if you make sure that fundamentally women have access to choose, to choose education, and their careers, there's no preventatives to that, then the idea is that naturally that the number of children will be reduced, and hopefully then, you know, you break the circuit from you know, all sorts of problems around access to wealth and access to prosperity around having that education from the female. But I did want to raise that point specifically, that it's not about being told how many kids, because dare I say that's possibly something that my guess is the extreme left will be a little bit sensitive to. Anyone, or right actually,
they're a little bit sensitive to a lot of things. I mean, extreme left and extreme right. So and that's fair enough. It's a free country. They're entitled to their views, and, you know, they're entitled to attack others if they want to do things that way, and we'll worry about what we can control. But access to education and access to voluntary contraception is the way to stabilize populations worldwide, and also do things like in the culture wars about things like abortions. If everyone's got access to contraception, you can resolve a lot of those types of things as well. Not 100%, but you can impact positively on a whole range of things. So we understand cultures in some countries are built on, you know, having more children is status symbols, and we also understand it helps with farms and all those types of complex issues. But at the end of the day, education, you know, do you want and you know, infant mortality and these sort of, you know, tragedies are things that come into these questions. But at the end of the day, more and more people sharing less and less isn't good. So, you know, that's really what it comes down to. So I think there's 2 types of environmentalists that I've seen. One is that, you know, doesn't want to include population in the discussion, and one that does. And where people that do want to include human population and impact, it's not just numbers, it's also consumption. It's, you know, and some countries and regions have much higher consumption per person than other regions. And one of the reasons is because there's so many people in some areas, they can't have a high per capita consumption because they've spread their resources so thinly. So there's all sorts of complexities in these issues that need to be talked through. But at the end of the day, you know, if you lead by example and you help others, that really, what more can you do?